Why in a world that has so much are we absolutely hell-bent on making ourselves miserable? With social media, with the news, with the paper, with magazines, with music, with films, oftentimes people will opt for more for misery than they do for joy. In a world where you are a co-creator of your future, of your destiny, of your life, of your thoughts, your decisions and actions, it raises the question, why is misery such a dominant force in our Western world? So if we turn to the Bible, first and foremost, we've got 4 places where it talks specifically about the power of our thoughts. Now I want you to remember that as we go through this sort of session today, because literally what you think will lead to an intention, will lead to a desire, and it will lead to an action, and it takes 0.009 of a millisecond to make it all happen. That is why we always say the power of your thoughts. As a man thinketh, so they become. You can fill obviously with as a person thinketh, so they become. So let's look at Proverbs 23:7 to start with. The power of your thoughts. The Bible emphasizes the influence of our thoughts on reality. It doesn't say that as a man thinks, so it might happen, so maybe. It says, so they will become. And in Proverbs 23:7, it literally says there, so as he thinks, for as he thinks, so as they think. If you expect misery and focus on the negative, you are going to go towards what you are attracted to. Have you ever heard that analogy before where people are driving along and they see a tree and they're like, don't hit that tree, don't hit that tree, don't hit that tree. What happens? They end up hitting the tree because inevitably you attract what it is that you focus on. If you focus on not hitting something, guess what's going to happen? You're going to hit the tree. Why do you think so many people are impoverished? So many people are filled with poverty. They have amazing abilities, they have amazing skills, they've got every single advantage to them that's capable of you and me and everybody else, but they end up being miserable. They end up being just horribly depressed. And we're talking about a feeling of depression here, not clinical depression, which is obviously serotonin levels and dopamine levels. But the reason being is because when you talk to them, they're focused on who hurt them, they're focused on the trauma they went through, they're focused on the misery, they're focused on the anxiety, they're focused on, every single negative thing possible. Now, I'm not saying, as somebody who's been through those traumas, who's been through those depressions, who's been through those horrible times, that if somebody hurts you, you're not just to feel it, you're meant to laugh it off like a lot of witless wonder life coaches do. A lot of pastors and preachers do that. I'm not one of them. But what I'm saying is you don't stay there, okay? You cannot stay there in your misery and in your suffering and expect to go on to do really, really good. Sometimes these things happen. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond to them. If you expect misery and focus on negative thoughts, you will create in your mind and in your subconscious, as Carl Jung used to say, an environment that aligns with those expectations. I'll say that again. When you expect misery and focus on the negativity, you will often create a mindset and environment that aligns with those expectations. As you think, so you become. And it is as real as I'm sitting here right now in the west of Scotland. The sun's just setting and I'm talking to you. The way we think shapes the world we build. And when we focus on our hopelessness or failure, we can unintentionally make it our reality. Proverbs here, 23:7, encourages us to guard our hearts and minds, knowing that our thoughts influence our experiences. As we continue on, trusting God's provision, let's turn now to Psalm 34:10, shall we? Psalm 34:10 reminds us that God's provision is faithful and abundant. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord will lack no good thing. Often, our expectation of misery comes from a place of fear and insecurity about the future, wondering if we'll have enough, or wondering if things will go wrong. So many people worry about what hasn't happened that they never actually get started for the very thing that they want to do. Here's the thing. Problems don't last forever, and yet people believe that their problems are permanent. How do we know problems are not permanent? Let me shake this theory up. Let me shake this belief up for you a little bit here. Problems are not permanent because nothing here is permanent. Only your very soul here on earth is permanent. There is nothing that has been created, thought of, that's gone on, that literally will last when everything else has been wiped away. Nothing you can see, hear, touch, taste, or smell will last forever. There is nothing with permanency. Your health, your body, your mind, your relationships, your finances, nothing is permanent. So the crazy thing about this is, if there is something you want to do in your life, all you need to do is figure out what you want to do and then the steps you need to take to get from where you are to where you want to be. How amazing is that? And then here's the kicker, you got to do the work. But if you never get out of the starting blocks because of worry, and here's another popular one that Laurie and I have frequently talked about when putting together Teen Life Coaching, the illusion of failure. And it is an illusion because you can never fail. All you do is produce results. If I start sketching or I start painting and I paint a fridge when I decide to paint a mountain, well, I haven't learned how not to paint a mountain, but I have learned how to paint a fridge. So you try again, and maybe next time I'm going to paint a cat. And maybe next time I'm going to paint a dog. And then maybe next time I'll paint a person. But sooner or later I will figure out how to paint a mountain. You gotta keep trying. You gotta keep going forward. But you can't sit there all the time wondering if you'll have enough or if things will go wrong. You gotta take care of those things. Okay? And you start where you're at. You start with creating a compelling future for yourself. And you start rolling forward. This is what we do in our mental health mentoring sessions all the time. With people that have chronic and severe depression, that are borderline suicidal. And we sit there and was like, right, you need to create a compelling future right now. Why do people end up taking their own lives? Well, briefly, it's partially because they can see no good left in the world, because the serotonin levels are messed up, because the dopamine's messed up, because they live circumstantially in an undesirable situation, but more specifically, to tie all these things together, two things. One, their self-esteem is way skewed. Two, they don't have a compelling future, and if you're going to throw in a third one, they're comparing themselves to what other people have. This verse trusts and assures that if we trust in God, and again, we really look at God brought us here for 9 months when you were in your mother's womb. You were tended to, you were cared for, you were protected, you grew, you had no problem at all. Then, unfortunately, came the day when you were born, and your parents turned around and said, God, good job, God, we'll take it from here. And it, kind of goes downhill from there. But you have the ability now, at any moment in time, to change your focus, change what you want to do. And if you shift your focus from fear and misery to trusting in God's faithfulness, as somebody who's been a minister of God for 20 years, who then left the church, who wanted nothing to do with it, absolutely hellfire and brimstone, would spit venom and spit poison, absolutely, unbelievably was against the church, I was always brought back to God. And that image of God has never ever changed. Of Jesus, God, the Holy Spirit has never ever changed. It's always remained the same. It's been consistent. That is why I can preach and I can speak the way that I'm doing right now. If you are trusting and you shift your focus from fear and misery to trusting in God's faithfulness, it will change the way that you build your world each day. And if you spend that time meditating with God, praying with God, communicating with God, ultimately, what you will find will happen beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you listen more than you speak, is that God will guide your footsteps. The Bible talks about that. God will literally guide your footsteps. Now you may sit there and say, well, John, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know the trauma that I've been through. Well, maybe I've got a good idea. You don't know the depression that I've suffered. Well, maybe I've got a good idea. You don't know the anxiety. Yeah, maybe I've got a good idea. But what, again, I can come back to as someone who's been through these trials, is the joy in the midst of sorrow, the joy in the midst of trials. And this is the hard one. This is a very, very hard one. If you're going through a struggle right now, I completely understand. If you're going through a struggle right now and you're hearing someone like me sit there and say, well, the God, just trust in God and just do this about God and blah, 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 blah. You don't know my situation. No, I don't. But I know my own situation. I've known my own despairs. I've known my own miseries. I've known my own time when there's been mental health stuff that's taken me to the brink of existence. I know my own times when there's been physical health stuff that's taken me to that same place. Here's the thing. Proverbs 17:22 teaches that joy is a powerful tool to combat despair. Many times with people that suffer with depression and even suicide, once we've got them to a point where they can see some form of a compelling future, we begin to explore with them what they're grateful for. When you are grateful, you are rich. Even in the situation that you are. When I came back from America and I was basically destitute and homeless because of evils that a friend, in inverted commas, had done to me, I still had to be thankful. I could no longer read because I was so stressed out of my brain, but I could think, I could paint, I could speak, I could sing, I had a job over my, to pay for my bills, I had a roof over my head, I had a window that I could open, sometimes couldn't open, and it was great because, it meant that I couldn't throw myself out of it. I had food on the table, I was safe. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." How true that is. If you cannot see anything good in your life in any way, shape or form, you will wither like an old stick left in the desert, and it will be miserable, and you'll make everyone else around you miserable. But here's the thing. The moment you choose to change your focus, the moment you stop listening to what other people are telling you on social media, stop comparing yourself to other people, you will wake up and you'll say, "God, thank you. I have got amazing things in my life. I have got the ability to think. I've got the ability to speak. I've got the ability to move my fingers and toes. I've got the ability to move my head. I've got a body that's not racked with illness, sickness, or disease. I live in one of the richest parts of the world. I survive on more than $1 a day. I've got all the technological advances that I could ever want. I have so much to be thankful for." You can only ever build on success, or you build on failure, in inverted commas. But ideally, if you build on success, you're going to start getting momentum. You're going to start getting momentum and you start getting excited. And when you start getting excited and things start rolling forward and you start seeing things moving forward after a long time being buried in that desert, and after a long time of struggle, you are going to start moving forward in ways that you never ever thought you physically, possibly, ever could. And I know, because I have been there time and time again. And it is incredible. I'm there right now. I am sitting here right now working on projects that I've been working on for the last decade, that I have so much belief that God has called me to. But when other doors are closing off to you and it gets that scary time and you sit there, I'm sitting here being joyous when everything on the external says to the contrary. And then I start looking at what I'm thankful for. I start being thankful for my wife. I start being thankful for our cat. I start being thankful for living in a safe community, a safe house, having everything and anything I could ever want. Even though we may face challenges, choosing to focus on joy will shift our perspective. When we focus on the positive, uplifting thoughts and emotions, we can overcome the misery that we may expect. Joy is an act of faith. It has the power to heal and renew us, making it a vital part of creating a healthy world. How do I know that you can choose joy right now? Because if you're sitting there focusing on misery, you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, misery is permanent. Well, you don't know that. Nobody knows enough to be a pessimist about anything. And your suffering will often disappear or certainly lessen the moment that you choose to have a different focus. Finally, turn to Psalm 16:11. God's presence brings peace. Psalm 16:11 speaks of peace and joy that comes from being in God's presence. You make known to me the path of my life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. Many times our focus on misery stems from a lack of peace or from trying to control our circumstances. Essentially, we try and do it all ourselves. When, as I said earlier on, God brought you into the planet, do you know the statistical numbers, the just impossibility in the physical sense of you actually being here? It's in the 100 billion trillions to 1. Einstein actually worked it out at one point, and I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but it is a number far bigger than I can count with all my fingers and toes. God's presence brings the fullness of joy and peace that transcends our circumstances. When we choose to build our world in alignment with God's will, we experience His peace, which counters the expectation of misery. So to wrap up here, folks, you have at any moment in your day the ability to say, you know what? I don't need to be miserable. I don't need to be miserable anymore. And you might say, well, John, that's an absolute crock. How the heck do you know? Well, let's do it. Let's do the example right now. How do I know you can change your mood right here, right now? I want you to think of your favorite computer game, if you're of a certain age. I want you to think of your favorite computer game or your favorite song. I want you to think of your favorite love. Now, that might be a best friend that you haven't seen in 20 years. That might be a book. That might be a food. That might be work. That might be family. Fill in the blank. Whatever is your love. I want you to think about that. I want you to see them smile. I want you to think of the absolute, ultimate, most special moment in your life that's maybe known to nobody else except you. I want you to really fixate and focus on that. Focus, if you're thinking about a person, focus on their smile. Focus on it right now. I'm seeing my friend I haven't seen since I was 17 years old, 20 years ago. And I'm focused. I see them right there, right before me. How do you feel? Let's do another example, shall we? If you're listening to people all the time that say you're rubbish, you're pathetic, you're idiotic, you're stupid, you're fat, you're a loser, you don't matter, you'll never matter, you'll never ever be anything in this world, and you're hearing this with emotion and with vigor and with conviction, and you're starting to buy into it, and you're starting to put that into the subconscious, your entire world is going to change accordingly. How do you feel? I'm guessing right now you probably feel pretty rubbish. But here's the thing. If I sit there with you now and say you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're strong, you're amazing, you're mighty, look at all you've come through, you're a conqueror, you are a defiant conqueror that literally has the ability to conquer and do anything that you want to do in your life. You have the ability to think your way out of problems. If you can think it, you can make it a reality, because there is nothing that has been heard, seen, touched, tasted, smelled that hasn't come from a thought. Every single thing comes from a thought. Everything. The antithesis of everything is a thought. So if you are feeling miserable at any point in time, you need to look at, what am I listening to? Who am I listening to? Why am I listening to them? How are they making me feel? What am I reading? What words am I speaking over myself? And if you're really struggling with this, then first of all, come and visit us on YouTube, because we've got a lot of inspiring content, but visit and listen to people like Wayne Dyer, Jim Rohn, Florence Scovel Shinn, Tony Robbins. Those four people will immediately, especially Wayne Dyer, those four people will immediately begin to change the way that you feel. Look at how you're spending your time, who you're spending it with, and who is influencing you. And when you start to do that, my goodness, your entire life will change. How do I know that? Because in 2021, that's the exact same thing that happened to me. God brought these people into my life that I might share their message with you. And you got to pay it forward. We're out of time, folks, but thank you so much for listening. I hope this has really been beneficial to you today. I've absolutely loved it. I really have loved it. And if you have, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment in the section below. Let us know how we can help you. Other topics that you want to know, what the Bible says. What does God say about this? And as Charles Stanley, one of my dear teachers, used to say, trust God and leave all the consequences to Him. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care, my friends.